So I want to introduce you to somebody I think is amazing. Her name is Patty, and she has one of the most inspiring stories of her and her husband, Loren. In 1992, they got onto the Guinness World Record books for the first all-land crossing of the Darien Gap in a vehicle, and those two set out to do it, and they achieved that. So without a further ado, here's the interview with this amazing woman, Patty, and her husband, Loren. So everyone knows me. I'm Juliana, the overlander next door. So I'd like for you to introduce yourself to everyone.
I'm Patty Upton. Who am I? I mean, what else do I say?
So where are you originally from?
These questions are hard, and see, that's the first one.
Yep.
That's the first one.
I get that asked too, and I don't know how to answer it.
I mean, I was born in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. My birth certificate obviously says New Jersey. I lived there for a while, but my dad was military, so it was moving around a lot. A lot on the East Coast. Overseas, we were in Okinawa, then back to the East Coast. Then Dad retired from the Marine Corps, worked for the government. We went to Panama, and that's where I said, I'm home. This is eternal summer. I never want to leave. And I lived there for 17 years.
17 years? Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Now, I've lived in Salmon for 30 years.
30 years.
I can say, I guess I'm from Salmon right now.
Salmon, Idaho. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. I was going to say, is there any other salmon? I love salmon fish.
Yeah, I'm not, yes, I don't. That's one fish I do not like. Yeah.
Okay. I don't like the bones.
Yeah, salmon just has that distinct flavor to it. And I like a very mellow, white, you give me halibut. Oh, God, I could eat halibut. All the time.
Tilapia?
Not tilapia so much. Cod is good. Tropical fish, but we called it dolphin in Panama. I'm not sure if it's called. It may be mahi-mahi. I don't know.
Okay.
I always describe it as a fish that looks like it hit a wall because its head is perfectly flat.
Tuna?
No.
Tuna's not like that. That's right. Tuna's long.
Yeah. It looks like a fish that swam into a brick wall and has a perfectly flat face, almost rectangular. And it's a big fish. I mean, when you get a 60-pound fish, you know you got some food there. Mm-hmm. And we call them dolphin. They're not a mammal. They are a fish. And there is another term for it here in the States, and I don't know what it is. It might be mahi-mahi.
It might be mahi-mahi, yeah, because you hear that a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know, because I've always just called it dolphin, and I don't know what the correct term is.
Dolphin works.
Yeah.
Sorry for Taffy. There's quite a lot of things going on around here, so you'll hear her bark a couple times.
Probably mine too. Oh, dog, no wonder.
So that's part of kind of living on the road. And you just make do with what you have.
Where
and
you're at. Exactly, where you're at and what's going on.
Yep. So you have an amazing story.
I feel it's an amazing story. I'm not prejudiced or anything. And it's really my husband's story, and I will probably cry through this, so just ignore that. My husband had a dream, and it wasn't a motorcycle, had a dream to take one American-made vehicle around the world on a north-south course, all on land except for the South Atlantic. If you look at a globe, there's a land route from Rhodes End, Alaska to Rhodes End, South America, from Rhodes End, Africa to Rhodes End, Europe, and you'll end up 3,000 miles across the North Pole where you started from. And he had many complications in doing this, but the goal was finally achieved, and I got to be very honored to become a part of that. First as just a traveling companion, and later I became his wife, and I want to carry on his future.
Are we going to get the sprinklers turned on?
I don't know, either that or...
If we do, there's one right here.
Oh my gosh, that's like something broke. That's weird pressure. Oh no, there's one right here. Shoo! This may be interrupted.
The sprinklers just turned on. Hold on a second.
It's okay, guys. No.
All right.
The kids are having fun in the sprinklers.
Okay. Well, that was a fun, exciting little adventure there.
that's part of overlanding too. It's never dull.
It really is. That's all the part of the adventure too,
Yeah.
and just
You can't write in your journal about the sun came up, the sun went down. I mean,
No.
you got to write about the good stuff.
So we relocated. So we're back.
Yes, and I have no idea where we were in the conversation.
So you were just starting to tell about how
Loren's goal, and I was fortunate to become a part of it and then help him out a lot, and then later we became involved and we got married. It was years down the line before we got married. But I got to say that sitting shoulder to shoulder with someone in a CJ-5 24/7, 365 days a year does test a relationship. So if you can survive that, then marriage is a piece of cake.
Oh, yes. I've experienced that. Not even shoulder to shoulder.
No.
Just 24/7 with somebody on the road.
Yeah.
And you really does test the limits
It does.
of people.
You learn a lot about the person,
do.
their limits, your limits, and if there's an argument, you can't just slam the door and walk out because you're going down the highway.
Or you're going outside in the middle of the night and you're like, where else do I go?
Yeah. Fortunately, if we happened to be taking walks and we had arguments, we usually went in opposite directions, but we all ended up back at the same place. So it was.
Oh my gosh. So when did you start this journey?
I started it on his fourth attempt to do this trip, which was in 1984.
Okay.
He came down to Panama driving the sand ship Discovery, a CJ-5, a 1966 Jeep. And I had met him previously, but I always said I was the right age, but I was never the right mind.
Okay.
Or in the right place in my life. Finally, in 1984, I was at the right place in my life. I was at the right place in my mind. I was older, so I don't know that I was wiser, but I was older. So whether that worked or not, I don't know. But I said, yes, I want to go for 30 days.
Okay.
At that time, if you're not familiar, there's an area between Panama and Colombia known as the Darien Gap. The Darien Gap is a gap in the Pan American Highway. Darien is the province of Panama that it is in. It goes into Colombia as well. And it's not impenetrable, it's not impassable, it's not impossible, it is difficult. At this point in time, currently, it may be much more dangerous than it's been in the past.
Really?
With the drug trafficking increased and the human trafficking increased coming up from South America, people headed to here in the States, that's a quick, easy way to get through to Panama, and Panama kind of turns a blind eye at it from what I'm told, because they know these people are just going through their country and going north. So it's like, okay, come on, just keep right on going, don't stop. But this area is remote in that it's mountainous, it is jungle, it is rivers, it is swamp, it is villages. The highways in there are nothing but water, the rivers. That's what the natives use, dugouts to go from point A to point B. So it is not, but it is not impossible. But anyway, we left. Loren came down in '84, and that's when I said, yes, I want to go. It's going to take us 30 days to get through this. No problem. Little did we know, it was a big problem. And I had arranged for someone to work for me while I was gone. I took 30 days leave without pay so that I could pay the bookkeeper to be there full time. And I said, because I knew Loren's the type of person that what he says he means to do. If he says he's going to do it, he will do it. So I knew I couldn't tell him that I wanted to join and wanted to go unless I knew for certain my butt, barring maybe an amputation, my butt would be in the seat the day he decided to pull out.
Okay.
So I knew I had to have everything in a row before I even told him that I would be there.
Yeah.
You know, he knew I was interested. I was helping with paperwork and letter writing and phone calls and equipment procurement, that sort of thing. But I wasn't ready to tell him I'll be there until I knew that everything was lined up and it was going to be there. Because I knew if for some reason I said something and at the last minute I either got cold feet or, oh, I got a doctor's appointment next week or something like that, he would have lost all respect.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. So I knew I could do it. And we took off on the 21st of February from the canal, old canal area, former canal zone. Drove the 170 some miles to Yavisa, Panama, which is the end of the Pan American Highway in North America. There's a town there. There's a river, and that's it. I mean, there's lots of people, but that's it. There's nothing. You just have a river and lots of jungle in front of you. And the next day, February 22nd, we began the crossing of what we call the day one of the Darien Gap crossing, the Chukanaki River there at Yavisa. We crossed rivers, we never went up or down them. Other vehicle expeditions, and there's been a handful of them, that have gone through there have traveled anywhere from 10 to 20 to 200 miles up and down the river system, either to avoid the difficult area, or when they hit the swamps, instead of searching out and finding a dry land route through the swamps, they just go down the Atrato River to Turbo and go out that way. That's several hundred, well, probably 100 miles or more.
Yeah.
This is not what Loren said, and like I had said previously, when he says he's going to do it, this is what he's going to do.
He's going to do it, yeah.
And he was going to go entirely on land, and that was the goal. And we crossed the rivers. We never traveled up or down them. We always made sure that our guide understood what we hired natives. We were lost the whole time we were down there.
Yeah.
We'd ask them, how do you get from Pinogana to Boca de Coupe? Well, you get on the Tweeder River and you go up the Tweeder River. Well, no, we can't do that. We want to remain on land. So the guide may not know a land route, but he knows the land. He knows the people, he knows the little villages that are along the way, the other little rivers that are in there, and he could ferret out. So we had a guide that could ferret that out, mark a trail. Then we hired other men to go behind with axes and machetes and clear that. And when I say clear, I'm not talking freeway perfect. I'm talking
whatever you need to move out of the way. And
we also knew that when you're using axes and machetes, we don't want these guys chopping down trees the size of this. I mean, even this tree would have been a huge tree to try and take down. Although they could take it down in a matter of minutes with an axe. These guys were marvelous. But there's other things to do with the time down there than spend it on chopping trees down. So the route was to do as little cutting as possible to the smallest trees possible. And find the route that way. And we did that. I mean, the only time we cut down some big trees, and when I'm talking big, probably 10, 12 inches in diameter, was the third dry season in there when we had to build a bridge. And we needed the substantial strength and length of trees to do that. And that's the only time I can remember cutting anything down of any size. Now, you'd be laying in camp at night, dead quiet, everyone's pretty much asleep, and all of a sudden he'd hear this big crash, and out in front of us or behind us a huge tree would fall. It was amazing how you just walk through there that day clearing trail and everything was fine, and you come back and now there's a 2 foot, 3 foot, whatever tree across the trail that you've just cleared.
Wow. That's crazy. I've only ever heard like 1 or 2 trees fall on their own. And that noise is just amazing.
It is. And if you're close enough, you actually can feel that jolt. And we had one that fell. I remember it well because Panama is known for its hard woods. It has some of the hardest woods in the world. I mean, they've got one they call Cocobolo, and it's a beautiful wood. And then they've got another one that's something Nazareno, I think it's called.
Ooh, beautiful name.
It's kind of a whitish wood on the outside, but the center is almost a rose color.
Really?
So as the tree gets bigger and bigger, the rose, it still has the rose center, but the rose center gets bigger, and then it just gets, but it is hard wood. So it was one of those things you never wanted to cut one of those down at all.
Take forever,
you'd still be there. But one time, one of these trees fell across the trail. First off, my first thought was, God, how do I get this wood back to Panama? I want to make furniture out of this. This is beautiful wood. And second off is, how are we going to get around this thing now? Because it was right where we had cleared the trail. And I'm talking, this one was like a 3 or 4 foot high diameter tree. We're talking big tree.
Oh, wow.
And there was you could make some good furniture out of that. But it was one of those things that we just had to back up, regroup, and say, okay, we've got to make our way around it and do that, because there was just no way.
It was too big to even take it down, because they were using all hand stuff.
Yeah, all hand stuff. The advantage to the hand stuff is all you need is a file to sharpen it. If to break the handle of the axe, you do chop down a small tree and you make yourself a new handle.
Yep.
Other than that, you don't have.
There's no maintenance.
Right. There's been other expeditions that go in there with chainsaws. Well, okay, fine. Now you've got something mechanical that can break down. You got something that requires fuel and oil. You got something that needs special tools to sharpen it with, special knowledge to sharpen it, and possibly special know how to use it,
Yep.
where every Panamanian down there in the jungle knows how to use an axe and a machete.
Oh, exactly.
We always said that an axe and a machete and a rock. They can use the rock to sharpen the machete, and they can do anything with a machete, and they can pound with a rock. You're good. Whatever you need done.
Yep, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so you basically had a guide to also help you with language barriers as well, I'm sure.
Well, we didn't speak Spanish. Our Spanish was very elementary. Our guide spoke no English, but sometimes, I don't know, we were fortunate that we always had really intuitive people working for us. I'm not saying they're literate. I'm not saying they can write. Margarito could write his name, but that's as much as he could sign his name. That's all he could do.
Okay.
He could read his name. I'm not sure he could read anything else. Cookie, the gentleman we hired as our cook, again, absolutely marvelous man, incredibly smart man. He couldn't read and he couldn't write. He couldn't write numbers, which that just took me by surprise one day. I thought, everyone knows how to write numbers, right?
Yeah.
We had sent him out we were in a town in Colombia. This was during the Gap crossing, but we had left the vehicle to go get supplies, and we were trying to change money, U.S. money, into Colombian pesos. And we knew that Cookie could get a better rate than we could. So we asked Cookie to go out and tell us what the rate was. Well, when he came back, we weren't communicating properly or what. So I gave him a piece of paper to write down the numbers of what the rate was. He couldn't do it. He ended up writing hash marks.
Oh, wow.
And then counting the hash marks.
Yeah, well, at least he figured it out. Yeah.
He could explain to you how traveler's checks worked.
Okay.
He actually watched, he was the cook. He didn't have to help move the vehicle. His job was to make sure we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Sometimes there were 4 people, sometimes there were 14 people. And to make sure they were all fed and happy. That was his sole job. And to make sure we had lots of hot tea to drink. And he knew to boil the water for the gringos. He knew that it had to be boiled for us.
They would get very sick.
And so, but he'd be walking along the trail because we're slow moving, and he would walk along and he'd stop and watch us go through a difficult area or whatever. And one time we had the high lift jack out, jacking up the Jeep. Another very long story, convoluted, too much to go into, to put what we called side hill adjusters on. Loren was jacking up the rear of the Jeep, and in order to get these side hill adjusters on, he has to reach behind the tire, and the jack slipped out and pinned his arm to the tire, but the fender pinned his arm to the tire. I'm sitting in the driver's seat with my foot on the brake because we're on a really steep hill, and we haven't tied off yet with the winch cable.
Okay.
We don't have an emergency brake that's worth dinking that thing. So I'm making sure it's in gear, still got my foot on the brake, and he says to the kid that he trained to operate the high lift jack, to get it, to push the button in, to put it back under there, jack it up. And Gregorio was he was panicked. He couldn't think of what to do or how to do it.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, Cookie put down a cigarette, took his backpack off, walked over, took the jack, did what he had to do, put it under there, and jacked it up. He'd never laid hands on that piece of equipment in his life.
Wow, but he was watching and listening.
He'd evidently seen how it had been done.
Very smart.
And he picked it up, jacked it right up, not a problem, got his hand out, and everything was fine. Because I felt I couldn't get out.
Yeah, because you were wanting to hold the
because we were on such a steep hill. Loren's at the back left corner of it, so I could see where he was.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel comfortable getting out on that hill because it was pretty steep. Because that's one thing is it was steep and it was a side hill as well. And Cookie just grasped that. Now, in the opposite of that scale, years later, another whole trip, another whole story. Cookie, Loren, and I are in Cartagena, Colombia. We had just come in on literally a banana boat across the ocean for 3 days. Glad to get laying on bananas, sleeping on bananas, eating bananas.
Smelling like bananas.
And sea salt. Finally made it to shore, got off. We were getting a taxi cab to an office we had to go to. And we got in the cab, Loren's on one side, I'm in the middle, and Cookie's on the other outside edge. And the cab driver said to everyone in the back seat, lock the doors. Loren locked his door. Cookie had no idea how to lock the door. And this wasn't automatic locking. This was in 95 and an old beat up car. So I reached over and locked the door. He was lost in that part of the world.
Yeah.
Out there in the bush, he was a genius. He really was.
Yeah. So he had more of like survival instincts in the wild, but you put him into a more civilized area.
It would like taking someone out of the city and putting him in the middle of the jungle,
That's true.
and tell him pick up the machete and do something with it, and they'd probably be lost.
Yeah, they'd be like, I don't know, whatever I saw in movies.
Yeah. So he was just that type of guy. He's still alive. He's getting very old. Over the years, I've had several friends that have gone down there, and they've always looked up Cookie. He's now known by Cookie. Real name is Juan Ribas, but everyone down there knows him as Cookie. And they always look Cookie up for me, and they usually take a photograph and send me a photograph of them and Cookie.
That's awesome.
He's my brother. He really is.
Yeah.
I trust. There's few people in this world that you can actually probably say that you trust with your life.
Yeah, very few.
Out there in the jungle, Cookie and Margarito were two people that implicitly I trusted with my life. I can't communicate with them.
Yeah.
We can communicate, exchange ideas. I could communicate to a degree, but it wasn't a conversation. It was good, but it wasn't that good.
Yeah.
So anyone out there speaking Spanish and English and has a lot of money and wants to go down to the Darien, I know where we can find Cookie and do an interview.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
I would love to go down there and get his audio recording of his experiences that he felt on the trip. What did he see?
That would be amazing too. Yeah, just from his point of view as well. Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be another amazing one to see.
Yeah, I would actually love to do that.
Because you had so many people involved in this adventure.
We did. I mean, like I said, we had really good men most of the time. We had some that weren't so good, but I mean, in any field of endeavor, occupation, you're going to run across those that are, cutting corners or whatever, slacking off. And we had our fair share of those as well.
Of course.
And Loren made it clear that if you want a full day's wage, then you give a full day's pay. I mean, you go on a full day's pay, you give a full day's worth of work.
Yeah.
Period. If you don't feel like working, that's fine. You can eat, but we'll dock your pay for that day.
Makes sense.
They understood it because they also knew that there was a lot of natives down there that would line up to work.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were paying more than top dollar. I won't say square because our meals were not square. 3 meals a day. And yeah, they made good money on that trip.
Yeah.
And they knew that they trusted us. They knew they would be paid. If they worked just a couple of days, which we tried not to hire anyone that would work for just 2 or 3 days. Because we let it be known, even though it wasn't true, but we let it be known we didn't have cash or a lot of cash. We had, a little bit to buy rice or a little bit to buy plantanos or something like that. So when we hired them, we wanted them to work for, weeks at a time, if at all possible. But occasionally there'd be those that we found that didn't work out. Okay, after 4 or 5 days, we're good. You're going to have to go. So we would pay them off. But the rest of them that worked for any great length of time, they weren't paid until that end of that 30 days. I went back to my job in Panama. I cashed checks. I sat down because I kept a timesheet. I sat down and computed everybody's wages, put everybody's name and their money in an envelope, and everyone had an envelope, and then I sent this all down to Loren via the missionary pilot that could fly into this village, and then he paid them all off.
Wow. And
then the following year, we had the same situation, the following dry season, but we weren't in the village, so I sent the same thing. We hired men from that village. I sent the money down via the missionary pilot, and he paid the men off. So they knew they were going to get paid. It may not be immediately, but they knew that they were going to get good money out of it.
Yeah. And what an experience, too, that they got to do. I mean, I'm sure they've done lots of guides for people, but the first vehicle.
Right. And, something that Loren and I have basically said in all of our writings and everything else, it's truly the common man that was with us and helped us on this journey.
Yeah.
We didn't do this trip alone.
No.
There may have been 2 people in the vehicle, but invariably, you had to stop and ask, because this was before GPS. This was before, internet and satellite stuff and cell phones. You stopped and asked directions and bought a paper map, and it was in a different language, and so yeah. We would stop and ask directions, and invariably we found either the right person to ask, or if we didn't, he'd say, oh, hold on, I know somebody who does know. Or in Africa, there's no gas at the gas station. Imagine that. And we're in a fairly small village, but we're at a point now where we know we can't go any further until we buy gas. And we stop a car on the road. He says, oh, I don't know. He says, but I know somebody who might know. And sure enough, I don't know whether it's him or somewhere down the line, I think he was Greek. Anyway, living there. He showed up and he said, yes, he could find us gas. And he showed up with a 55-gallon drum of gas.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just always asking the right person and finding the right information, or him being able to find the right information for us. We stopped one guy one night in the middle of Africa this was a convoluted story. And I'd have to look at a map now because I can't remember the name of the village. When we were in Zaire, which it was called Zaire when we were there in '88, Mobutu Sese Seko was the president of the country. He was one of the wealthiest men in Africa, and his country was one of the poorest. And we're driving through 4,500 miles of four-wheel drive in Africa, a lot of it in Zaire. We're driving down this red clay dirt road through the jungle, and all of a sudden there's a traffic sign. It's a pyramid? Triangle?
Yeah.
With an exclamation point in the middle of it.
Oh.
And it was one of those things that, first of all, you're not looking for a sign. Second off, it was like, what was that about?
Yeah, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah,
does that mean, what does that, what do we do? As we came around the corner, all of a sudden, the jungle cleared, the road was paved, and there was a city there.
Oh.
There were concrete houses with electricity, there was people, there were vehicles. It was like a time warp. It was literally a time warp. We found out that was his birthplace.
Oh.
So he put a lot of money into his birthplace. So the people were very happy in his birthplace. Well, we stopped a man and asked him, where could we camp for the night? And he said, I have property out of town. It's safer out of town. Come with me. So, and it's getting dark. So we're following this guy. He's in a vehicle in front of us, and it's getting darker and darker. And all of a sudden we see lights behind us. Yeah, that was us.
Yep.
Are we being led somewhere? Are we being snookered, whatever? Are we in a trap? What have we done? And we pull in a gated, fenced-in area, big piece of property. And there's probably about 30, 40 yards in, there's a water tower with a water tank on it. Just a small, 10, 15 feet off the ground water tower with a small tank on it. And this car's following us in, and the man we're following pulls over. He says, yeah, just park over there. So we kind of go slowly up and around this water tank. And as we get around it, Loren stops. He jumps out and he takes both of our journals, because unfortunately some of our journals are not totally complimentary to everybody.
Yeah.
And he slips them between the water tank and the platform that the water tank's sitting on.
Okay.
And slips them in there. Gets back in the car and comes on around and parks. It's the secret police that have followed us into this area. We've arrived in, and I wish I could remember I'd have to look in journals, Mobutu Sese Seko's birthplace. He's due to fly in the next morning.
Okay.
So anyone that comes in within 24 hours of the president is now under suspicion.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So, okay, what do we need to do? Well, you need to come into town and we need to question you. Well, can't you question us here?
Yeah.
No, you need to come into town. I said, okay, fine. So we get, in the Jeep, we follow them into town.
I was gonna say, they followed you all the way there to tell you to come back all the way.
And we get back to town. We don't even go in their office. We stand out on the curb and we talk to them. And finally they say, okay, you can stay the night, but you have to be out of town first thing in the morning before his plane lands. We said, we have to buy gas. And they said, okay, you can buy your gas, but you get out of town before, I forget what time the plane was due in with Mobutu Sese Seko to arrive. And you be out of town before he arrives.
Wow.
We said, we will be out of town, guaranteed. And so we found our way back. I don't know if someone led us back or we found our way back to this guy's house, found our journals, because we just didn't want, you don't know whether they're going to search you, confiscate things, who these people are. And we are not totally complimentary in everything that we say in our journal. And we didn't want that exposed.
Being found.
So he takes those and hides them. But anyway, so we found out what exclamation point means. It means there's a city.
Yeah, wow. That's a weird sign for a city.
And I've looked and I have never seen that.
Yeah.
Because if you look in some map books, especially like some of the map companies that make maps for foreign countries. I don't know if Michelin
I wouldn't be able to tell you either.
Michelin might be one. There's another company that does it. I think it's a French company. Anyway, maybe Michelin is a French company. I don't know. But there's usually a map, a thing there, a legend. And I've never seen an exclamation point.
I don't think I've
And it was
ever
one of
seen
those
it
things
either.
that was so fast and so quick. It should have been, stop up, I got to take a picture of that,
Yeah.
But I didn't. It was like we're both saying, what does that mean? And I'm actually looking in our map to see if it explains it in our map, and we didn't have anything. So we're just trying to figure this out as he's driving, and it's like, oh my God.
And then there it is.
Yeah, it was literally like around a corner. Street lights. There were street lights.
Wow. Yeah, it was like coming in from just desolate
it was like
stuff.
100 years.
Like,
it was like
right?
a 100-year gap there. Just boom.
Like you said, time travel.
Yeah. One of the other things that was fascinating about, at least in Africa, overlanding, the roads were so bad.
Yeah.
And the countries, there weren't that many people doing it, but there were some. A lot of Europeans were overlanding. And this is, like I say, back in the 80s. If there was anyone coming at you, you always stopped them. And they would stop you, and you would exchange information about what was the road, what did you experience back there, and what did you experience back there, and exchange, and where did you buy fuel? Did you find fuel? Where did you camp? Did you find a great place to camp? So we'd exchange information, and we do this several times throughout the period going through Africa. And one time in Zaire again, literally middle of nowhere, there's a Land Rover coming towards us, old style Land Rover, and we stop them. We're sitting there chatting. There's 3 people in the front, and because it's British, the driver is on the far side. And then there's a gal in the middle, and then there's another guy in the side that would be next to Loren, because Loren's on the left-hand drive. So we're all. I'm not talking too much because the 4 of them can talk a little bit. Well, actually, the girl in the middle wasn't talking. The 2 guys and Loren were talking. The girl in the middle kept leaning forward. She'd look back at Loren, and she'd sit back. She'd look forward again, and she'd sit back. I think the 3rd time she did it, she says, "I know you."
Oh.
And Loren says, "What?" This was 88. In 84, on his way to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska to start the trip, he passed a car in Canada that had a flat tire. So he stopped and asked this young couple, "Do you guys need help?" They said, "No, we're doing good. Fine, thanks, got it under control." He said, "Okay, fine," and he took off. 30 minutes later down the road, he has a flat tire.
Oh.
Here comes the car. They stop. They ask, "Do you need help?" He says, "No, I got it under control, but you know what? Let's exchange names and addresses," because it was all names and addresses, no emails back then. So he gets, Wilkie was the last name. I can't think of her for Elkie Triddle. That's what
okay.
He gets her name and address in West Germany, and the other guy's name, I don't know what it was. And that's it. Bing, gone, boom.
Wow.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Wow.
4 years later, in the middle of Africa, there's Elkie.
That's insane. And she remembered him from that small
encounter. Yeah, because he didn't remember. Once she said the flat tire in Canada, then of course
it was
he
okay.
Yeah, because other than that, he didn't recognize her. It's like, oh my gosh. So it's a small world when you're out here doing this.
Oh yeah, it really is. And you run into just so many amazing people out here doing this type of lifestyle, and everyone's story is so unique and so different. And their perspective of things is just insane.
Yes, the perspective is everything, and everyone has their own. Some people see a desert as a bleak, ugly, desolate, awful place they never want to set foot in. Other people think it's absolutely magnificent and peaceful and full of life.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm in the latter category. I mean, granted, Death Valley at the height of summer, not so much, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in between. There's parts of the desert that are just gorgeous that I find amazing. And then there's other parts where I'm like, yeah, I don't even.
Yeah, well, and see, in this country, in the United States, desert here isn't really desert. You don't know what desert is until you go to North Africa.
That's true. That's true, yeah.
The deserts here in the States really have a lot of vegetation.
That's true, yeah.
The deserts in other parts of the world, the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, there's nothing. There's not a blade of grass. You don't even hear a bird. You don't hear an insect. There's nothing that appears to be of this earth there.
It's just dry,
dead, salt pan. Funny incident there. These are just random stories, and I've got thousands of them.
You've got so many stories.
We were traveling with a British couple we'd met. They were on a motorcycle, and we'd stopped somewhere. We must have gone through a fairly good-sized town. This is before, well, no, it wasn't. You could have those refrigerators that plugged into your cigarette lighter at that time. We didn't have that. We didn't have any refrigeration. But we went through this little town, and I said, well, let's get some meat, and we'll stir fry it. So I'd get it, and I'd wrap it up in a wet towel and keep it in a shady place in the truck until that evening. So we found a place to get off the highway, the Pan American, and off through the salt pans and out of sight of the highway. And we were, good several hundred yards off the road. And set up our camp with the British couple. And we did our stir fry and had a good time and sat around talking. And it's, definitely dark, so, whatever. And I excused myself to go use the ladies' room. And I walk out away from camp a ways and drop my drawers. Someone's throwing rocks at me.
Oh.
I said, what the hell? Why are they throwing rocks at me? Can I pee in peace?
Yeah.
And I didn't think too much of it. And I went back. I said, who's throwing rocks? And said, no one's throwing rocks. Oh, that was weird. Well, it didn't dawn on me till the next morning when I'm out peeing in the ladies' room out there. And the sun is coming up. It's been up a little ways. It's going to get warm up nicely. And it's, chills coming out of the air and everything. And someone's throwing rocks at me.
Oh.
I thought, what the hell? Then I realized this is got a salt crust on us. When it cooled at night, it popped.
Oh.
And when it got hot in the morning and the sun hit it, it popped. So you had this little bing, bing.
So nobody was throwing rocks. It was nature.
It was nature.
Wow.
And I thought, oh.
That would scare me too.
Yeah,
like if I thought somebody was chucking rocks at me, I'd be like,
first of all, there's no rocks out there. That was the other thing. There's nothing. It's just kind of like little fine gravel and beautiful area. Love the Atacama. Love the deserts in western Peru. People don't realize that the western side of Peru is just got some magnificent desert. The Andes mountain run down the more or less the middle of the country, well, a little closer to the coast. And everything on the east side of those mountains is the drainage for the Amazon, and everything on the west side is just desert. It just is really beautiful desert, sand dunes, beautiful sand dunes.
Yeah.
The rivers that would make it through the mountains and flow down to the ocean, they would literally paint the valleys just verdant green and little villages and not crop circles, but your little plots of land with different people's crops growing on them, little shops in the little town, and then you'd climb back up out of this and get up on this plateau up on the edge, and then it would just be as brown and desolate as could be. Wow,
that's amazing.
It was. It really was, and like you say, perspective. I found it all beautiful. You take me back to the East Coast, and I can't see. There's nothing to look but 15 feet away, and there's a wall of vegetation. Which I like trees, but I like trees at a distance. I like mountains. I like to be able to see the mountains.
A little bit more stuff.
But I like to be able to see out there and what's there. That was probably the jungle. You could get probably 20 yards, if that, probably even less, away from a red Jeep in the jungle, and you'd lose it.
You wouldn't be able to see it.
You wouldn't see it, yeah. You wouldn't be able to, and I'm talking daylight, I'm not talking dark, I'm talking daylight.
Just
because,
middle of the day.
Yeah. It would just hide in there because the vegetation would be thick.
So thick,
unless you were on the trail that you had just traveled on, then you'd end up at the Jeep. But if you happened to be coming from a side or the front of it,
you wouldn't see it. Wow. That's crazy how amazing the jungle is.
Not being able to see distances is to me almost claustrophobic. I need those vistas. I really do.
And sometimes not being able to see actually makes you feel like it's longer, which you would think it wouldn't, because like you would think if you can see for as far as your eye can see, that that actually makes it feel like it's a longer distance. But if you can't see, you have no actual visual of an end area.
Right, yes.
So you're like, how far have I actually gone?
Yeah, or it seems like we're going forever. 5 miles?
Right. So you told us a story yesterday that I found one of the most interesting stories. You guys, when you were traveling, you built a raft because you could no longer go in the Jeep.
Oh.
Could you tell a little bit about that story?
People always want to know about breakdowns, because breakdowns are a big part of overland traveling.
Oh, yeah.
They're not only a big part, but they're going to be there.
Yep.
And we had our fair share. We were traveling in Africa. We were in northern Sudan. We had left Khartoum. And you'd have to look at a map. I'm a map person. I really am. I do everything I can. If I'm reading a book, I got to have a map to see what they're talking about. But the Nile makes a big swing, and you leave Khartoum and you go across open desert and you hit the town of Dongola at that swing of the Nile River. And then we continued up the west side of the Nile River. We're headed for Sudan. For Egypt. This is Sudan. And this was late June. We knew we had to keep the Nile in sight because that was our water supply. We couldn't have carried enough water. And we knew that the Nile flowed north, so we knew that was the direction we wanted to go. Our compass didn't work anymore, so that was our main, not our main, we used stars and sun as well, but our one source of navigation was looking at the flow of the river.
Yeah, you knew if you followed the water, you're eventually going to get to Egypt.
Right, and we knew that, water's the one commodity you can't live without for very long.
Yep.
And we had been up the west side of the Nile for quite some distance, and all of a sudden this rocky outcropping hill, not really mountain, rocky outcropping, came right down to the river. No way we were going to make it between the river and that outcropping. We're talking boulders and gravel and just rough as anything. So Loren started to swing out around this outcropping, went out around the outcropping, and as we got around and we're trying to head back to where we thought the Nile River would be, because the question was if the river's turning at the same time we're turning, we might not find it for a while. So we didn't know what the river was doing. We just knew that it was over there, so we've got to turn that direct turn to the east. So we got around this and started back, and we got stuck in some soft sand, and we broke our right rear axle right rear axle shaft. We had already used the spare back in the Central African Republic, and that night was extremely anxious, because that was the first time that either one of us, well, I shouldn't say that, Loren's he has been in other life-threatening situations. It was the first time I felt that I was in a life-threatening situation where, okay, we could die here. We could die trying to get out of here. We looked in our journals, and I think it was about 90 miles back there had been a village. About 45 miles back, there'd been a little kid with some goats, so there probably was some establishment of people there. So we knew there were people behind us, but we also knew that the village of Khartoum had to be in front of us. We didn't know how far. We knew it was up ahead, but we had no clue how far. And we thought, well, we're going to take our chances and we're going to go forward. And we talked about, okay, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? He says, well, first thing you're going to do is you're going to sit down and you're going to make a list of everything you think you need to survive to get out of here. And I'll make a list, and we're not going to compare it. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to do it in quiet, and then when we're done, we'll compare our lists. So, and I know part of what he was doing was trying to get me to focus on positive things instead of negative things. And we did our lists, we compared our lists. They were pretty much identical. The only thing he had that I didn't have was the inside rear view mirror to use as a signaling device. And he said, okay, and that really, and it was it did have a calming effect, because then we knew what we were going to need, and then we started talking about, well, how are we going to do this? Well, if we can't find the river, we're going to have to walk supplies up and secure them, and then come back to the Jeep and walk supplies up and secure them, and then leapfrog, keep going further and further with loads of supplies until we can find something. So we worked this out that night, and then the next morning he said, I'll hike up to the rocks there and see what I can find as to where the river might be. Fortunately, he found the river. It was about a mile's walk from camp, and it had a good current to it. And that was a big question we had, was if we found the river, was there a current, or were we far enough north to be on Lake Nasser, in which case we probably wouldn't have a current, or at least not a substantial current. So we were really concerned because we had no idea where we were. And he said it's got a good current. He could actually hear it from up there.
Oh, wow.
And he said, we're going to go out by boat.
Oh, wow.
He said, well, there was some tamarisk. If you're from the West, you know what tamarisk is. Tamarisk bushes along this area where we were. We're going to hide the Jeep in the tamarisk bushes so it's more or less out of sight, just in case there's a parade through here or whatever. And we're going to build a raft. And we have 2 big tin drawers that are in the back of the Jeep that hold cooking supplies, pots and pans, stove, that sort of thing. And they're probably, I think they're 17 inches high, 11 inches wide, or they could be opposite, I don't remember, about 33 inches long. So we used some Permatex silicone sealant and sealed the seams of this tin box. And then he cut some of the tamarisk branches and made poles and a frame and attached the tin box to the frame, and then we'd put all the gas. We were carrying extra gas in jerry cans. Put all the gas in the Jeep, and then use these jerry cans as outriggers on the outside for additional buoyancy. Inflated the spare tire tube that we had, and we don't have a compressor. I keep forgetting this story. We don't have a compressor or anything. The way we inflate tires, if we end up deflating them for the sand or whatever, is we had one that worked off engine compression. You unscrewed a spark plug, you screwed this device in, and you attached it to your tire. You started your engine up, and the engine compression would pump up your tire. So
I've never heard of that before.
It's almost foolproof. The only thing that can really go wrong is you might get a hole in the hose, in which case you use duct tape. Nothing.
That is really cool.
Nothing to go wrong. And that thing saved our life as far as tires go several times. But we inflated the spare tire tube, tied it with a long climbing rope that we have to the raft. The raft itself, the box, held food, because we didn't know how long we were going to be on the river. We didn't know. Food, clothing, pot, water, important papers, and that's about it. And then we held onto the raft or the inner tube, and we got in the river and floated down the river for 2.5 days. Till we saw a white cone tent on the west bank, the east bank, till we could make our way, head across the current and get over to it. And through hand gestures and broken English, we found out this guy's produce, whatever he had, pumpkins or watermelons, was going to be taken to Wadi Halfa the next day, or that night. And it was about an hour's ride by vehicle. So at least we knew we were headed in the right direction, that Wadi Halfa was fairly close. And from there we could get a train from Wadi Halfa 600 miles across the desert back to Khartoum. And then it was a process of going to the Hilton Hotel, the only place you could make an international call, back to the States to order the parts. And Loren decided that the Jeep had meant too much to be left out there by herself. So he went ahead and bought 6 weeks worth of food, went back out by train, and hired a native in Wadi Halfa to take him up to where the Jeep was, where Broken Axle Camp was. And I was in Khartoum waiting for the parts to arrive, and within 10, 11 days, I had the parts in my hand.
Nice.
And unfortunately, at the same time, within the day, the Blue Nile and the White Nile converge at Khartoum. Both in Ethiopia and southern Sudan had torrential rains, and the Niles converged there, went into flood. There were pictures in the newspaper of Khartoum from the air. Khartoum was an island.
Oh my God.
The water, because it's on a point of land like this with the one Nile coming in, the Blue Nile and the White Nile, and it literally, the two of them had joined across below where the city was, and it was literally an island. The train tracks had been washed out going north.
Oh no.
And I thought, now I'm stuck. I can't get to Loren. He doesn't know what's going on. I can't get word to him, tell him that I've got the parts and everything's fine, but I can't get there. And I knew he was worried. I knew he only had 6 weeks supply of food. And he had originally took a Sudanese out there with him, so we'd have somebody in camp if he got hurt or whatever.
Yeah.
So there were actually 2 people eating this supply of food.
6 weeks worth of food.
So I was really, really concerned about all this. And I knocked on doors. I talked to people, businessmen we'd met and was exchanging money with. I said, camel herder going north. I don't care.
Yeah.
Anything moving north. And it was about 10 days, 2 weeks. And somehow, I don't remember, I'd have to go through journals again to know the particulars. I'd gotten in contact with the United Nations Development Program, and they had been loaned the use of a Belgium C-130 to fly relief supplies up to Wadi Halfa. Bags of rice and dry goods and boxes of pasta and stuff like that. And they said that I could be on board.
Oh, wow.
They said, be on the corner at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was standing out there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
You were like, I can't wait.
I am not missing
like,
the boat, literally.
Going.
Yeah. And it was an hour flight, which was wonderful compared to the train ride.
Yeah.
And got to Wadi Halfa, and actually when the plane landed, Mubarak is the name of the, at the time we were there, the Shell agent for Shell Oil in the town, because they had motorboats and stuff. So they were, and there was a ferry that came in from Egypt with passengers, sometimes tourists and that sort of thing. But so there was, you know, need for a Shell station there, so to speak.
Yeah.
He was the Shell agent, and he had a letter from Loren, because this guy that had been with Loren had come back to Wadi Halfa with this letter from Loren to see if there was any way they could get it to Khartoum to me. And so he had this letter, and he knew this plane was coming in. He didn't know I was on board, and he was there to deliver this letter to this plane to see if it could get it back to Khartoum and deliver it to me. So yeah, and I just made contact with him. He arranged for me to have a boat to take me upriver.
Wow.
And so yeah, went back upriver the next day. Loren lost a lot of weight. He was a scarecrow by the time I got there. Had a great suntan. Looked really good.
But yeah, just 6 weeks. 6 weeks worth of food between 2 people.
Yeah.
And you were gone how long?
Well, it had to be maybe, it's hard to tell. I'd have to look at the journals, because the total delay from the time we broke down to the time we were fixed was 70 days.
Wow.
And it took 15 minutes to do the repair job. That's the really frustrating thing.
Yeah, just an axle shaft.
He went to free-floating axles. You don't jack the car up. You don't take off the tire.
Yeah.
You undo 6 bolts. You pull out the broken axle shaft. You put in the new axle shaft. You tighten the 6 bolts. You're done. That's it. You can hardly get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
And 4.5 hours and 36 miles after we left Broken Axle Camp, we were on a tarred road in Egypt.
Wow.
And we knew from that point on we were going to be on some form of surfaced road the rest of the trip. And it was a good, from that point to wherever we were back in Africa, it was 4,500 miles of 4-wheel drive.
Wow. That's crazy. You have so many interesting stories that we could sit here for hours, I'm sure, sharing so many of those interesting experiences.
Because one always reminds me of another one, but wait, there's more.
Right. So your entire trip that you guys, from start to finish, how many days did that take? If you can remember off the top of your head.
Yeah, and see, that gets broken down. He started in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska on June 15th, 1984. We finished July 4th, 1989 at Gamvik, Norway. So just over 5 years, 56,000 miles, start to finish.
Yeah.
The Darien Gap alone was 741 days to go 125 miles. But, wait, there's more.
Okay.
We didn't remain entirely on land between Israel and Jordan. When we were in Israel in 1988, Israel and Jordan were technically at war. We couldn't drive from one country to the other country. Either way, we couldn't drive from Israel to Jordan or Jordan to Israel. And we ended up having to take a ferry boat from Egypt up to Jordan, and we continued on, and like I said, we finished at Gamvik, Norway on July 4th, 89. That water barrier gap posed by human nature instead of Mother Nature, as the Darien Gap was frustrating to us, especially Loren.
Yeah.
Again, setting out to do something, saying he's going to do it, and then have something like that put in his way.
Yeah.
And and life got in the way at that time too. Making money, obligations. The Jeep began to deteriorate because she wasn't being used. We were working. We were traveling other places with our Dodge. And Lauren's nephew, Lawrence, who was with us the first 30 days in the Darien Gap, said, I'm going to get the Jeep fixed for you and I'm going to make sure you guys get back to Israel. And this was in 2016. So he came over to Idaho in Salmon where we live, and he picked up the Jeep and trailered it back to his place. And he had a friend at work with him, and the friend Mike and Mike's father were both mechanics. Lawrence, not so much. I mean, he knew what to do if you told him what to do, but as far as to diagnose, he wasn't that good at that. But he was, he was a great go for, do for type thing, And so Mike and Larry kind of spearheaded the whole thing. And they got the brakes working, they got the leaks underneath pretty much fixed, they got the leaks of the ball joints were behind the front hubs all fixed so they're not leaking and putting grease everywhere. Took the gas tanks out and cleaned underneath them and painted underneath them and cleaned the gas tanks, all new gas lines, all new brake lines. They really didn't do much to the engine other than tune it up and clean the radiator. That was about all they had to do with the engine. The wiring had to be completely redone. The wiring was a Loren special.
Reminds me of me.
In hindsight, like Mike said, he said, I'm surprised this thing didn't catch fire and burn. He said he's got, and I know there's technical terms, different gauges of wire. Well, Loren's got thick gauge attached to thin gauge, attached to heavier gauge, attached to thinner gauge, all with, lots of electrical tape.
Oh, no, not even crimped or anything.
Just bare the wires, twist them together and wrap electrical tape around it. And it was just nothing color-coded, nothing new, just a mess.
No idea what anything was.
All shoved up underneath the dashboard.
Oh, dear.
So Mike tackled that, and Omix Ada out of Atlanta sent a whole new wiring harness. And that, I think it probably took Mike a day or two.
Oh yeah, to mess with wiring.
To rip out the old wiring and put in the whole new wiring harness. We actually have turn signals now. And parking lights. We never had those before.
It's more fancy now, right?
It's road legal. We never had those things before. We had brake lights probably and maybe headlights. That was about it. But yeah, it was amazing. And yeah, super good. So everything was going kind of slowly because we're trying to raise money to do this because we have to be able to ship the Jeep to Israel to drive this, what we called the final mile. And in 2017, the fall of 2017, the man we'd been working for 27 years, 24 years, said he could see Loren's health deteriorating. Because he didn't see Loren but every few months. Yeah. I was there all the time. I mean, I knew it was deteriorating, but I didn't know to what degree. Greg could really see that health going down. He said, look, you guys need to do this sooner rather than later, which we knew we needed to do. He said, so I will pay for all transportation costs for the Jeep and the two of you to and from Israel. Wow. That was land transportation for the Jeep from Yakima, Washington to Galveston and all the way across to Israel and back again. Wow. And that was 99.9% of the budget right there. Yeah. Everything else was,
everything else would be a lot easier.
Food and lodging, big deal. Nothing at that point. So he said, but you have to go sooner rather than later. He said, you need to go this spring. So spring of 2018, it was arranged. We did it May 3rd, 2018. We drove from the road we were on in Israel in 1988 through the borders over to Jordan, made a U-turn on Airport Street where we had been in 1988 in Jordan, and drove back to Israel. Wow. So at that time, that's when all four wheels of the Sandship Discovery had officially been entirely on land around the world.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And I'm sure all the planning and all the the anticipation of being able to finish it and just every step of the way, just feeling that accomplishment that you made.
And I always say, I was interviewed previously for this and someone said something about it. And I said, well, it's a dream come true for Loren, and for that it's a dream come true for me, because it was his goal and I was glad to be a part of it. And to be instrumental in helping organize it and see it come to completion for him.
And it's just a story of everyone that was combined together with you too, and all the people involved.
And there's still people that we are still in touch with. Yeah, there's still people in Africa that we're in touch with. There's still people in Sweden that we're in touch with. I found somebody that had been on one of, a Swede that had been on one of Loren's previous expeditions through the Gap, another whole story, who had just happened to be hiking through and spoke Spanish. And Loren said, "You want to help me out with language?" And Laura said, "Sure, why not? I'm just hiking through." And we'd lost touch with him over the years. And here about 2 years ago, it was before Loren passed, so it was about 2 years ago, I started on the internet, and for all the problems Facebook and all that can create, if it's used right, it's really an amazing tool.
Yeah.
And I went on and I looked up the name Lars Anderson. Well, for those of you that aren't familiar with the name Lars Anderson, it means John Smith here in the country. So yeah, if your name is Lars Anderson, it's just like John Smith here. Everyone's named Lars Anderson in Sweden. So I'm looking up Lars Andersons that would be about the right age. And, you know, I have a vague idea of what he looked like in 1977. And now it's 2022. And I'm trying to think, okay, was that me? No, that's definitely not him. And I came up with 4 possibilities, and I messaged each one of them. 1 responded, "No, it wasn't me." 2 I never heard from. The 3rd one responded, "No, it wasn't me, but I work for Parliament and I can find them."
Oh, wow. So the Lars Anderson,
yeah, the Lars Anderson
helped you find the actual
one I was looking for. Yeah, he's in Parliament, in the government. He said, "Yeah, I can find him. You give me whatever information you have on him.
Wow.
And I will find him." And I said, "Well, I know this is his name. I know this is an address from eons ago. I know he was a merchant marine. Worked as a radio operator on a merchant marine ship."
Wow.
I think that was about all I had. And he found him.
Wow.
And I got an email address, and I've been in touch with him now since then.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, and backing up to that is the story going to Israel. Before we left for Israel, I don't know, I was on Facebook and I saw this guy, Jeeper, some really technical rock climbing that he was doing with his Jeep. The stuff that we would never do in our Jeep. Our Jeep was home. She had an objective to accomplish.
Yeah.
And we knew that if we broke something, we were going to have our self in a fix.
She had her own journey.
Yeah. So that wasn't our thing. But this gentleman by the name of Yanov, that was his thing. And I just responded to some of his videos, how amazing they were, blah, blah, blah. And over the time, I said, we're going to be coming to Israel. He said, well, keep in touch and leave it at that. Well, we had mechanical problems with the Jeep when we finally got the Jeep off the ship. And, plunk yourself down in a foreign country with mechanical problems and figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So I went on Facebook and I messaged Yanov, "We've got a problem."
Yeah.
And I barely sent the message, and I included my cell number, and my cell phone rang. He says, "Don't worry, we've got it under control. It's taken care of."
Wow.
Next morning we showed up at the port. There was someone there that he knew that was also a Jeeper, who was kind of worked at the port and was kind of taking charge of things. They'd called another gentleman who had a tow truck, a piggyback tow truck, who was also a Jeeper. He came out. They took us to the only Jeep mechanic within 30 miles, the only Jeep's parts store in the entire country, supplied all the parts that were necessary, all at their expense. We paid for nothing. We paid for nothing from these people. When the tow truck driver took us and the Jeep to the mechanics, like I said, 30 miles from where the port was. Then he drove us 30 miles back to the Airbnb we were staying in Ashdod, the town we were in. And when we got out, we said, what do we owe you for this? I mean, we're AAA members, but it's not going to work here. He said, nothing.
Wow.
It's a Jeep thing.
Wow.
And I had a lanyard that said, I think it was red with black lettering, that I had the Jeep keys on, or a set of Jeep keys on, and I took it off and I gave it to him. Here, a few months ago, maybe a year ago, he had taken a picture of it. He says, "I still got this, and I still really like this."
That is so cool.
It was $10 off of Amazon or something, but
it was to him. It's a memory.
Just that. Yeah, it was. Yes, it was just that. And like I said, these are common working men, everyday people that have their own lives, have their own families, and they're out there helping total strangers.
People, yeah. I mean, it's amazing how many people both you and Loren touched in that whole entire journey.
Yeah.
Just all of the lives and all of these combined people that just made this whole entire story possible.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I have a link on one of Loren was a classical music person. And I have one of the links on my website because I talk about how it was the common man that made this trip possible. First, common man, there was no big bucks on it. There was no, people ask, there was no financing. There was no sponsorship. We did get some in products eventually, but minor.
Yeah.
Tires, things like that. Nothing else.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Shock absorbers. You know. Which was good. I mean, I'm not saying that was bad, but it was. We got hamburgers from Wimpy's. So I mean, you know, this was all great. We got a battery from Exide.
Nice.
You know, these were all things that we needed. I mean, we were doing okay with what we had, but it was nice to have a brand new one.
A new thing, yeah.
So, yeah, that was all really good. But we were a carpenter and a secretary, and this is what we wanted to do, and this is where our money was going, and this is how we were going to do it. And it was everybody else that was just out there that we found that helped us do this.
Yeah.
And one of the links on my site, there's a piece of music called Fanfare to the Common Man. Beautiful, stirring piece of music, but that was, and I put it out there and dedicated it to all those people that
everyone that
really
was a part
helped
of that
us
journey. Wow.
and made it possible.
Wow. And I'll have her website in the link down below. Go check it out. There's tons of photos that you have on there. If the website's working.
Yeah, right now. My hosting company, if you know a good hosting company anyway, my hosting company and I are on, we're in, we're out, we're in, we're out. It's sometimes working, sometimes not working. So hopefully, and one of my goals this winter is, because I live here in Idaho and I'm gonna lock myself inside for the winter, is to get the website up and working, modernized, because it is not mobile friendly. It really has to be accessed only from a computer. That's my goal, is to get it updated. It was, I built it 20 years ago, 27 years ago. So I've added to it, I've changed it a little bit, but it's all been built on such an old, ancient, archaic platform that it looks like it's an old, archaic website.
Yeah.
So I hope to bring it into the 21st century here in the near future. And whether it's with the same hosting company or not, I don't know, but I've got to get better service than I've gotten recently.
Yeah. And you'll figure it out. All the stories you tell me and everything, it's amazing how things just kind of worked out. They figured themselves out or something like that. And I love how both you and Loren were in all these things you were living by the way that I want to live by now too. And I tell myself all the time is, you took chances and just went with the flow. You went with whatever happened.
We did. And you know, I don't think we were ever, well, actually, no, maybe I shouldn't say that. I was going to say actually a very irresponsible risk taker. I don't want to say that, because I've now read Loren's journals since I've typed them, of previous to us leaving South Africa and even parts going through Africa, and realizing how many issues he was having with the Jeep. And I'm thinking now, in hindsight, what were we thinking?
You weren't, though. You were just experiencing life.
Because it wasn't that we were being reckless, I don't think. It's just that we had confidence that we would make it work.
You were just in the moment.
You know, we were gonna, again, I've started a collection of Lorenisms that I want to pass on to his granddaughter Candy and his great-granddaughter Sparrow, who both have the same middle name as Loren, which is sweet. But one of them was, if I don't find a way, I'll make a way.
Yeah. Yep, it's true.
Yep. And the other one that he always said was, if it doesn't work, damn it, make it work.
Yep.
So yeah, that was kind of the philosophy. So yeah, it was, we may have been reckless, we may have been foolish, we may have been absolutely stupid and naive, but we lived without hurting anybody.
Yeah.
We didn't step on other people's toes.
No.
We didn't pay bribes.
No.
We lived by a code that what we said we were going to do, we were going to do.
We're going to do it, yep.
And we lived it well.
Yeah. And that's all part of just the experience and the journey, and just getting to just go through life in such different, unique ways. And you'll forever remember that. And the stories you'll be able to tell of you guys traveling just will live on multiple people's lives.
I hope so, because I want people to know that there really is a world out there, and there is a very small percentage of the world that give everybody a bad name.
Yeah.
There's an awful big percentage out there that are really good people.
Yeah.
And we've had people literally that have nothing. They live in a mud shack with a thatched roof on the edge of a cliff. We ask if we can park there for the night because we feel that it's a good, safe place, and that's all we need is a good, safe place to park for the night. And they come out and want to offer us bread and eggs.
Wow.
We've got 10 times more amount of food in our Jeep than they have in their house for their entire family.
Yeah.
They are willing to give whatever they have. And it's like, you know, we feel humbled by that. Yes, we appreciate that, but we really are just fine. We just need a real safe place to live or to stay for the night.
Yeah.
And, you know, to make them understand without hurting their feelings.
Exactly.
I don't want to take food out of the mouths of the kids because you can see they've got kids, they've got, you know, it's just... It's just the way people are. That's the majority of the people.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that too unless they're living this type of lifestyle as well, because so many people, without sounding mean, are trapped in their own little world.
They're all here.
Yeah, they don't realize how vast this
It's not
world
an I
is.
thing, it's a we.
Yeah.
It is totally a we world. We will get this done. We can do this.
Yeah.
We can get there.
Yeah.
I've always said that life's an adventure, make it worthwhile.
Yeah, yeah, and it really is. And we, as an entity, or as ourself even, have the power to really do anything we want if we set our minds to it. And in general, we ourselves are the ones that hold ourselves back.
Yes,
Because if we really want to, we can go out there and accomplish anything.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We put somebody on the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can put somebody on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, what else is there we can't do?
Exactly.
And it's fear that holds a lot of people back, a fear of the unknown.
A fear of the unknown. Yeah, I don't know what's over that hill, so I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Me, I don't know what's over that hill. I want to go see what's over that hill.
Exactly. Or, oh, that trail looks really cool. I have no idea what's down that road, but I kind of want to go drive down that road now.
There's a saying, there's a line, it's an old movie called Quigley Down Under with Tom Selleck. And long story short, but anyway, one of the lines in there, I don't know where we're going, but I don't want to be late.
Yep.
And I don't know where we're going, but let's get going.
And
that's it, you know, it just go. I mean, I've always said that it's the first step that's the hardest. You take that first step out the front door, every other step's going to get easier. Every other step is going to get much, much easier down the road.
Yep. That really is the hardest step, is that one first beginning step. And we have multiple first steps in our life.
Oh, exactly.
Hundreds of them. You know, it could be the first step to a new job, or the first step to trying a new food, like random first steps that a lot of people don't realize are first steps towards something more amazing, more great. And it's just getting past that one little
obstacle.
Worry.
Just over
one
that,
little,
get over
if
that,
I do this,
get over
like
that threshold, that little bump. Just get over that and go for it.
Yeah. And I love your story, because your story has so many times where a lot of people would have turned around. So many times where people would have been like, this is insane, what are we doing? But both you and Loren...
And sometimes we said that.
Yes, but you still did it.
Right.
Yeah, you still showed people that although you're scared, if you set your goals for something, you can accomplish those goals.
Right.
And that's just amazing.
It is. And I just, I want to inspire people. I want people to know that you can do this.
Yeah.
If this is what you want, prioritize your life. Figure out what it is you want in life. It may not be to take one American-made vehicle around the world. It may be to go see Death Valley, or to visit all national parks in the United States, or, you know, to do the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail, or it may be to take a trip around the block.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, just say, this is possible. This can be done. And start planning your life accordingly. You say, this is the goal, so therefore step back and say, okay, how am I going to reach that goal?
Yeah.
And then, you know, whatever you're doing, you just start working towards that goal. You may not go out to dinner as often. You may not, you know, buy a new piece of furniture or a new vehicle or whatever, or maybe you do buy the new vehicle because it's going to take you to these places.
Yeah.
But that's what, not going out to dinner. I used to say going out to the movies. No one goes out to the movies anymore. But go out, going out for a night on the town where you might drop a few $100s.
Yeah,
Well, save that. That'll go towards your vehicle. That'll buy, maybe, some extra gas tanks if you need to, or whatever.
Whatever it is that you want to accomplish.
Whatever it is you want to do, you just say, okay, I can do without now because this is what we're going to do in 6 months' time, 8 months' time, whatever.
Yeah.
And this is the goal we're going for.
Yeah, and that's a great way to set yourself up too, because a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I don't know if I can because I have like all these fears or stuff like that. And like you said, it's step back for a little bit and kind of reevaluate what it is you want.
Yeah.
And look forward to what it is your goal is.
You keep that in mind. Again, my husband was what he called the trip was called a romantic high adventure. He was born 100 years too late. He should have been born in the 1800s. There's a Broadway play, I think it was made into a movie, musical, called The Man of La Mancha, based on Miguel Cervantes' book that he wrote in prison about this gentleman, the Man of La Mancha. There's a song in that play, movie, whatever, called The Unreachable Star. And that's what we would always say, that there's that unreachable star, and when we made it to Israel and Jordan, we reached the unreachable star. It had been there so long, out there, and we finally reached it.
Yeah, after all that time and all the plans and everything like that, you reached your star. Yeah. And that's just so amazing. That's so amazing.
Sorry.
It really is. No, it's okay. It really is, because it's just, it's wild being able to see something that you want and then finally getting to that end and being like, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yes.
And this is like all of the hard times that you went through and all of the happy times and all of the ups and downs, just to finally get to that last moment and be like, wow.
Yeah.
And to look back too now and be like, wow, how amazing was that?
And I want people to know, that's it. I just want people to know that they can do this. There's nothing magical about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing absolutely magical about it. You don't need a special talent. You just need the desire. You start with it in the heart, and you get it in your head, and that's it.
Yeah. And that's really all it is. I mean, that's if you want to do something, the only person holding you back is yourself.
Yes.
That's all it is. I don't remember the saying that somebody said, but somebody said a really good saying. I really wish I remembered it. They were saying something about doing something. What is one thing you can do?
Oh, that was Loren. That's one of Loren's. Yeah, that was
There
Loren.
you go. Yeah, I knew it. I love that.
Yeah,
that was so great.
That's Loren's, that's his philosophy in a nutshell, actually. We would give slide presentations to grade school, high school, whatever, anybody, listen. I would give the presentations, and then afterwards we'd ask questions. The kids would ask us questions, and we'd do questions and answers. And Loren's favorite one to ask the kids, especially the younger ones, like the 6th, 7th graders, those that are, still eager to learn but not out there being little smartasses yet. And he'd say, what is the one thing you can do entirely by yourself? Nobody's going to help you.
Yeah.
What is the one thing you can do? Well, I can shoot baskets. No, somebody had to make that basketball. Someone had to make the basket. I can do my homework. Well, the teacher had to give you your homework.
Yeah.
Well, I can eat dinner by myself. Well, your mom made the dinner for you, right?
Yeah.
No. What can you do by yourself with no one's help?
Yeah.
I don't know. He said, in my opinion, the only thing you can do entirely by yourself without anybody helping you is fail.
Yeah.
Because you yourself have to be the one to say, I give up.
Yeah.
So don't give up.
Exactly.
And if you do, get up and do it again.
Exactly. Because we can't really win without failure.
Right. I mean, failure is a way of learning.
Exactly. Exactly.
You learn from those mistakes and you think, okay, I know how to do it better now.
Exactly.
So don't ever give up. If you fail, just keep right on going.
Yeah.
Do it a different way.
Exactly. Figure it out. Try something new, like a broken axle.
Yeah.
Broken axle, go build a boat.
Yeah.
Float down the river, and then many, many days later, come back, fix it, and get out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so always attribute that to Loren. Yeah. Fail. That's the only thing you can do on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Because it's so true. It really is. Yeah, there's not many things that people do on their own other than, like you said, fail.
I mean, somebody somewhere is always giving you help or advice, or you're getting a paycheck. You know, you're making money somehow. You're being able to then buy food that is being shipped in. So yeah, there's somebody somewhere that makes all this work for us.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing too. A lot of people have to realize you don't have to do it alone. Like your and Loren's story, there were so many people involved in that entire journey, that entire adventure. It wasn't one person or two people. It was an entire village of people that made that end game
possible.
Yeah. Seriously though, thank you so much for being on this and sharing your story. And I really do hope this touches anybody out there that hears this. I really hope it inspires them to go after things that they don't think they can do, because you can do it.
Yes.
You know, and like Loren said, you're the only one who can fail, but you're also the only one that can also win as well. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julia.
You're an amazing person. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, that's it.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Sun is shining, but the rain is welcome too. Friends are nearby, don't need another view. Time is not on my mind, but then it's you. Oh, I love it when the love comes around, and then I remember all things must pass. But I'm not gonna wake up, wake up. I'm not ready, let me have another day. Don't wake up, wake up. Keep it steady, cause I'm happy, I'm not gonna wake up. No, no, not yet.